Hello, listeners and learners. A warm Namabian welcome to all our NAMCOL NSSCAS Advanced Subsidiary Geography learners and everybody else interested in learning about the natural wonders of the world. Among the top of the list of natural blessings is, of course, water. In this radio learning program, the final in our series of 5 programs, we are going to talk about the water balance and how people sadly modify the water cycle with some of their behavior. If you are a NAMCOL student, you will find the topic of the water cycle and its modification in your NAMCOL learner's textbook in the module and chapter about the drainage basin. First though, some other important information to shake our brain cells and loosen so we can focus on water. Water is life, right? So, what does a table become when you accidentally pour water on it? A pool table. Okay, let's talk about recycling of water. This is one that Vantukers will know. What are the 2 reasons you should refrain from drinking toilet water?
2 reasons not to drink toilet water? Oh, number 1 and number 2, that's a dirty joke. Was it a joke?
Okay, so you know about recycling. How well do you know the water cycle itself? So learners, in this lesson, will help you prepare to answer questions in your final exam that are coming up about the concept of water balance and to explain how people's behavior at times causes modification of the water cycle. Let's get started. Firstly, let's be clear about what the water balance and the water cycle are and how these 2 concepts differ from each other. Water balance refers to the difference in the amount of water entering the water cycle system as rain, hail or snow that's leaving through evapotranspiration. There is therefore a balance between the inputs and the outputs in a hydrological cycle. There is a formula to describe this water balance, and the formula is P equals E plus R plus O minus S. Again, the formula to describe water balance is P equals E plus R plus or minus S. P for precipitation equals E for the amount of evapotranspiration plus R for runoff plus or minus S applicable S for changes in storage of the water. Water balance is P equals E plus R plus or minus S. P for precipitation equals E for the amount of evapotranspiration plus R for runoff plus or minus S for changes in storage of the water. Alright, now that we know how to define or describe the water balance, what then is a water cycle? Well, the water cycle is just the movement of water from the Earth's surface into the atmosphere and back again to the Earth's surface, and this process continually infinitely. However, as AS learners, you should also clearly indicate how the water gets into the atmosphere, what happens to it while in the atmosphere, and how it returns back to the Earth's surface. Therefore, your answer should include the following: the loss of water from the Earth's surface through evapotranspiration into the atmosphere. Once in the atmosphere, the water cools down and condenses to form clouds, which eventually fall back to the Earth's surface as precipitation or rain, and the process continues. But what is important for us to consider is balance in the water cycle. Are the inputs of rain, hail, and snow always in equilibrium with the outputs of the hydrological cycle? The answer is no, not always. There are three situations that describe the amount of input and output in the hydrological cycle. There can be a negative balance, a positive balance, and a water balance itself. A positive water balance is when the amount of water entering the system is greater than that leaving it, resulting in a surplus of water. We would think such is the ideal situation, but remember, too much water can result in undesirable conditions such as flooding, waterlogged conditions, and a rising of sea levels. So, that is when there is a positive water balance where the amount of water entering the system is greater than the amount leaving it, resulting in a surplus of water. A negative water balance is when the amount of water that leaves the system is higher than that entering, which then result in a water deficit or scarcity. Water shortages create problems, including a global or regional shortage of water and drought. And lastly, we have a situation where the amount of water entering the system equals the amount that leaves the system. This is closer to the ideal situation, and the water cycle can then continue indefinitely in balance. What needs to be in balance are the components or processes of the water cycle. Here we are referring to the main components like evaporation, transpiration, condensation, precipitation, overland flow, also known as surface runoff, infiltration, and percolation. For examination purpose, you should be able to identify these processes from various diagrams and explain what each of them is. Again, the components of the water cycle are evaporation, like steam from a kettle; transpiration, when steam is from water on a hot surface; condensation, when steam cools down and forms water again; precipitation is rain, snow, and hail; overland flow, such as the flow of a river. This is also known as surface runoff. Infiltration refers to the permeation of water through pores and gaps. And percolation, which is a process of purification of water through filtration. We are saying that for examination purposes, you should be able to identify these processes from various diagrams and explain what each of them is. Now, unfortunately, as we said, we humans often spoil even the good balance that can occur in nature. There are actions, of course, that modify or change the water cycle and that causes an imbalance. In the exam, you should be able to describe and explain how our activities affect the processes of the water cycle that we have just mentioned, which then modify the global hydrological cycle. Please listen attentively to the various human activities that modify the global water cycle. Firstly, there are deforestation. Here is how deforestation affects the processes of the water cycle. The removal of trees causes less evapotranspiration, which leads to low rainfall. When a lot of trees are cut down, this also increases the level of atmospheric carbon dioxide, which would normally have been neutralized by leaves through photosynthesis. So, with higher carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere, heat gets trapped in the atmosphere, the rate of condensation is reduced, and the result is no rainfall. At a local level, the removal of trees reduces interception, storage, and increases overland flow. This means that there will be less soaking of water into the ground, which reduces the amount of groundwater. An increase in overland flow means river may silt up with sludge and mud. The second human action that disrupts the balance of water cycle is the construction of dams. Dams are built to store a large amount of water, which reduces the amount of water available for evaporation and reduces the flow of water downstream. Thirdly, when people burn fossil fuels such as coal, this also affects the processes of the water cycle. The burning of fossil fuels such as natural gas, oil, and coal releases greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. This again traps heat inside the Earth's atmosphere and increases its temperature. This will increase the rate of evaporation so that eventually the water will not condense to form clouds. Because the temperature is too high for the water vapor to cool down. So, this means that the concentration of water vapor will increase, and water vapor is also a greenhouse gas which traps heat, making the Earth's atmospheric temperature even higher. It seems that we as humans are quite guilty with regard to disrupting the water cycle. Another negative impact we have are agricultural activities. We have to grow food. Agriculture unfortunately replaces the natural vegetation cover, which reduces transpiration, uses up groundwater, reduces interception of rainwater, and increases overland flow away of water. There is one more human action we must discuss, and that is the abstraction of water from boreholes. This also affects the processes of the water cycle. When we extract water from the ground, the water table is deepened and the amount of water in it gets less. This means less water remains available for rivers and streams on the land surface, which can cause some surface rivers to dry up. Eventually, this could lead to a reduced rate of water, less water vapor in the atmosphere, less condensation, and a little to no rainfall. We don't want that. Let us all do our part to ensure a healthy water cycle in external balance for ourselves and our future children. Now, let us say goodbye to our AS level learners who have been listening and making notes with us during these 5 lessons. Thanks to Mr. Eno Ankonga of Ella Duplessis High School in Windhoek, who wrote the lessons in the series under the guidance of NAMCOL's program developer, Yul van Harte, and others in the NAMCOL team like Mr. Claude Zibazu. We also acknowledge NAMCOL's coordinator for Mrs. Audrey Poulton and educational broadcast coordinator Mr. Manfred Isaacs, who brings everything together. Our offsite script editor is Mrs. Lynette Smith. Please remember, NAMCOL has many more radio lessons that can help you brush up on exciting school topics in your grade. Check out our website www.namcol.edu.na. With that, we wish you Godspeed in the final exam. Goodbye.
This lesson is produced by NAMCOL with funding from the Ministry of Education, Arts and Culture.